Disclaimer. The contents of Studio 151 podcast do not represent the views and beliefs of the TU Media Lab or the University of Tulsa.
Welcome to the Balls Talk Sports NFL podcast. I'm Elson Gratz, joined by my co-host Victor Ratliff, and the 2024-25 NFL season is down to just 3 more games. The AFC Championship, the NFC Championship, and the Pro Bowl. Maybe I'm forgetting one, but we don't have to worry about it this week. First things first, Victor, how's semester 2 treating you so far?
You know what? We're starting off well. Work's already piling up, but you know what? That's college for you. And you know what? I could really use some balls talk sports, some time to talk balls, and that's what we're here for.
I'm always excited to talk balls with you. I had a hell of a first day because with MLK Day, it starts on a Tuesday, and I read my Monday schedule, so I only made it to one of my actual scheduled classes, starting things off on a balls talk sports high note. We've righted the ship since then.
That's good. You know what? We made the necessary adjustments. Yeah. All right. Well, that's
we came out of halftime.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? The first half wasn't friendly, but we adjusted, which is what all good coaches do. First day, it went all right, but you know what? The week's gotten better since then, right? This is the Balls Talk Sports way. Maybe it doesn't start out great, but we have the coaching talent to adjust.
I was going to say this is why we're head coach candidates.
Exactly. Though Chicago hired Ben Johnson, which I'm glad because we told them no repeatedly, and then they kept coming back, and then we said no, and they were like, fine, we'll hire Ben. So, yeah, we are not going to be taking a job. Neither of us are going to be taking a job this coaching cycle, especially not with Dallas.
I was going to say no interest in Dallas. I think we both need GM-style roster control. We wouldn't be a fit.
Like what they're giving to Cohen and Johnson is like the bare minimum of what we need because that is the level of value that we bring to an organization, and we deserve to be treated as such. So until a team comes around that really wants to treat us with the respect we deserve and give us the roster and the ownership situation that really warrants us committing our time to them, then we're not going to join.
And copious amounts of money.
That too. We're like Liam Cohen in that way.
We deserve 3 times the cash he got because he's an offensive mind.
Absolutely.
We do defense and special teams as well.
And offense.
There you go.
What about dual head coaches?
If
we were to be dual head coaches, would you be the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator?
That's a really good question. I think that I would handle... I will take special teams.
You'll take special... I'll just do OC and DC?
Correct.
All right.
Because special teams is, I would say, weighted about twice as much as either offense or defense.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's on the field a third of the time. So, twice as much.
And this is why you listen to us. We've got a lot of familiar faces in the conference championship games this year. The Eagles, the Bills and Chiefs, which we'll get into in a few minutes, and the Washington Commanders, who head to Philadelphia as 6-point underdogs. The Eagles are on a 14-1 run right now, dating back to Week 6. The one loss, 33-36 in a shootout to the Commanders, who tied up the division series with that win. This is a really exciting matchup, and I am rooting for the Commanders. I just have a hard time seeing them pulling it off because even in that game that they narrowly won, Devontae Smith had the chance to put that one on ice late. Jalen Hurts got knocked out early. It was Kenny Pickett, and as much as I bag on Jalen Hurts for, I think, being a great example of what a modern system quarterback looks like, moving to Kenny Pickett mid-game is a substantial downgrade. I think first and foremost, I don't know if the Commanders can hold up in the trenches on either side of the ball, especially with Sam Cosmi tearing his ACL.
Yeah, that's a big issue because now that Sam Cosmi tears his ACL, he's been just a really solid. He has been just a really solid force for that offensive line, especially in the run game. But he's been doing a good job in pass protection as well. So now you look at the behind that, you know you don't feel as confident, as secure as you did when you had Cosmi. I believe, they've got Michael Dieter at center there. He could replace him. Trent Scott could replace him. Our boy Chris Paul, from the University of Tulsa. I hope he plays. That would be awesome. But either way, you're looking at probably a downgrade. And in a game where you are already going to be outmatched in the trenches, you need all the help you can get. So one of your best offensive linemen going down is going to hurt. But it's... Even though Washington has such a massive trench disadvantage, they have that is only half of the game when it comes to pass rush and sacking the quarterback, because you can get pressure, but you also have to sack the quarterback. And when you look at the difference between Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts, they're two different monsters. Jaden Daniels in the postseason has a sack rate of 1.5%. The lowest this season is 2.6% with Josh Allen, which was a historic number. You know what I mean? Jalen Hurts was sacked 7 times on 13 pressures in the last game. There are two different players, two different ways to deal with handle. One of them is graceful, and one of them is very good, and one of them is Jalen Hurts losing control of his mental faculties. So, yes, the Commanders might be outtrenched, right? But they're going to out quarterback the Eagles. So I worry about that for the Commanders. You need to win the trench battle, and we'll get to that whenever we talk about Philly and that run game and how Washington matches up there. But this is a part where I think I'm willing to put the trust into Jaden Daniels to avoid that pressure and make the play.
You hit the nail on the head, because I think the way that the Commanders win this game is Jaden Daniels goes superhero mode.
Yep.
In that first game against Philadelphia, where I think we both picked the Eagles to kind of put the Commanders back where we expected them to be. Commanders looked a little outmatched on offense. They only dropped 18 in that one. Daniels looked not bad, but like a rookie quarterback. Yeah, he made a few mistakes early on in the second matchup, and then he went complete psychopath in the second half of that one. He's seen this defense twice now. I don't want to say Jaden Daniels is elite after one season. He's still a clear cut below the top 4 guys, I think.
For sure.
But I would maybe take him over Justin Herbert on a play-to-play basis.
I still think I'd give Herbert the benefit of the doubt, but it's a conversation, and that is, I don't think anybody, even the wildest Jaden Daniels supporters, could have expected that Jaden Daniels could be in the conversation for number 5 quarterback in the NFL after his first season.
C.J. Stroud was absolutely fantastic in his rookie year. I don't think that he put the type of fear in defenses that Daniel has recently. And you talked about how it's going to be up to Jaden Daniels essentially to win this game. They're going to have to out-quarterback the Eagles. That's why I think Philadelphia's defensive game plan needs to be to make him throw everything underneath. Take away the deep ball, basically keep the top on the defense. I don't think that the Commanders are going to have a strong run game to consistently move the chains. We know that Daniels can attack the middle of the field. That was maybe a negative on a scouting report coming into the season. He's shown that he can quickly process defenses and he can distribute the ball. But Philadelphia has been really good at tackling that stuff and not letting offenses have the easy yardage. What they can also do is keep quarterbacks in the pocket. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is going to have his nice scrambles. He's going to break the pocket and extend some plays. But the Eagles are 28th in blitz rate and 2nd in EPA with no blitz. They have cornerbacks who have been shockingly able to survive on islands. And the Commanders drop from 4th in EPA per pass to 9th when they're not blitzed. I still think that the Commanders are going to have a strong offensive performance. The question is, can Philadelphia make things hard enough on them that their offense can play downhill the entire way and establish the run game with Saquon Barkley, who I think is going to have a fantastic day?
Yeah, you have to, if you're Washington, normally I feel like I would say you need to stop the run, which of course you need to stop the run. They didn't stop the run last week against Detroit. They didn't do it at all. I mean, Detroit ran for like nearly 9 yards a carry. Detroit also had 500 yards of offense, but that's a whole nother story. You need to stop the run. And against Philly's defense, which is considerably better than the shell of Detroit's defense, it's going to be harder to put up the points that they did against Detroit. But the basic blueprint, you can still try it. What happened, the blueprint last time was, let's just shock them early. Let's just score early. And then, guess what? They're down 14 coming into the third quarter. I know that that sounds easy. Let's just score a bunch of points early. Every team will do what they could. But that is, you need to do that. You need to come out here and you need to shock them. That is your only chance, because if you get into a tough, in the trenches, hard-nosed game, you're going to lose that game. You just are. Well, you might not, but there's a good chance you do. And if you let Philly get out to a lead, you are going to lose that game, because if Philly has the time and they have the game script to run, they're going to do it. You know, Washington got beat repeatedly by the run against Detroit last week, but because of the game script, Detroit had to go to the air. They had to put their trust into Goff in under pressure situations in high variance moments where he showed his true colors and he made his mistakes. And that's where a system quarterback breaks down. And that brings us to Jalen Hurts. And that is the goal of Washington. That's what Dan Quinn's going to try to do. He's going to say, Cliff, I need you to go out there and give everything you've got early. Give everything you've got for the entire game, ideally. But if you have to pick one half, do it in the first half. Go up. If we can go up by 10, you have to throw with Jalen Hurts. You can't just drop Saquon Barkley into the line and let him run for a 75-yard touchdown every play. You could try, but it's not going to work. You have to let Jalen Hurts throw, and that is where you win the game. You sack him. You pick him off. That's your path to victory. So you stop the run. You need to stop the run. If this is a rough and tumble game where it's close the entire game, it's a necessity to stop the run, but it's going to be really hard for you to win that type of game. You don't want to play the type of game where you need to stop the run. You want to play the type of game where the only thing you have to do is stop the pass.
Washington's run defense is kind of unique because I remember us talking about Bobby Wagner on the Pro Bowl episode and how he's kind of like the archetypal version of what he used to be, where he's a borderline minus player in pass coverage, but he still just doesn't miss tackles. He's actually gotten even better since then. Yeah. And here are the stats that I go to. So Saquon Barkley went off in both games against the Commanders, 26 for 146 yards and 2 scores in Week 11, and then 29 for 150 and 2 touchdowns in their loss to the Commanders in Week 16. I was thinking, well, maybe Saquon's athleticism is going to be an issue for an aging Bobby Wagner. He didn't have a missed tackle in either one of those games. And what's so funny about this is the Commanders have gotten mashed up front for the majority of the season, yet they're a top 10 run defense by EPA per play. So I investigated a little bit. Why is that? Well, they are tied for first in not allowing yards over expected. They are first in not allowing yards after contact per rushing play. It's Bobby Wagner and some Frankie Louvu, obviously, and how they'll march Jeremy Chin down into the box to take that away. But man, that is a hard angle to take against Saquon Barkley, where if he breaches the second level, he is going to take that for a 75-yard touchdown. And he did it, twice against the Rams? Like, I know that you don't want to count on your running back to hit home runs, but with Saquon Barkley, it's about as close as you can get. However, like you said, shock him early. It's possible. This is an incredibly dynamic Commanders offense, which is something I didn't think I would be saying headed into the season. If Jalen Hurts does have to throw, I don't trust him, but A.J. Brown versus Marshawn Lattimore is my matchup to watch. Marshawn Lattimore has not been exactly what the Commanders had hoped for when they traded him in. I don't think that he's been a liability. He's looked like a guy out there at best. In man coverage, he's allowed a 135.3 passer rating, 114th of 127 cornerbacks. A.J. Brown is no longer number one in yards per route run against man. That's Nico Collins. He's still got 3.89, which is like that's the average Najee Harris carry. Like you can either give Najee Harris the ball or you can just have A.J. Brown run a route against man coverage. And I think that epitomizes why the Eagles have been so successful, why they're in this 14-1 stretch. Because if the run is taken away, the majority of the time Jalen Hurts still doesn't have to do a lot. He can just throw it up to a receiver and have A.J. Brown win a jump ball, or he has receivers screaming open, be that Devontae Smith, be it Dallas Goedert, who's been removed from the injury report. Man, I just think that things are going to be too easy for the Commanders. I watched that Detroit game. I hate to say it. It was a really good defensive performance, kind of a rough game for Detroit's offensive line. That's a tough thing to force. Jared Goff kind of threw that one away. Jamison Williams threw a pass into triple coverage. Yeah. Philly has been very good at avoiding turnovers this year. Washington's going to need to force them, and I think that that's easier said than done.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But you know who is also really good at avoiding turnovers heading into that game? Detroit.
That's exactly it, though.
Like, every time, and we are guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. We write off the Commanders and we say, listen, they're really good. It's a great story, but this is going to keep them out. This is going to keep them out. And I did it last week, man. You guys remember, I was very close to picking Washington over Detroit.
You should have.
You talked about how my last week was spent. My last week was spent lamenting the fact that I picked Detroit over Washington when I was teetering on it. and I didn't. I didn't have the balls. This week I do have the balls.
All right.
I'm going to pick Washington to beat Philly and to head to the Super Bowl for the first time in who knows how long. Because ultimately, this has been a great run for Philly over the last 15 games. But the last 2 games have not been good. You got in the win column, that's great. How you looked was awful. It's been a bad run of form for Philadelphia, and we're talking about this passing game. It's Jalen Hurts has had that easy button in the playoffs. It hasn't been there. AJ Brown, his game against Green Bay, a catch for 10 yards. His game against Los Angeles, 2 for 14. It's not all his fault. It's because Hurts has been so awful under pressure, and Washington just throws guys. They throw stuff against the wall, and it works. And generally gets pressure, and this Philly offensive line is giving up pressure at a high rate right now, which is never good. Jaden Daniels has been unsackable, and if you can't sack the quarterback, it's going to be a close game no matter what. And Philly's pass rush isn't that great anyway. Their pass rush isn't that great. You've got a lot of young, inexperienced defenders in that front 7 for Philadelphia. Maybe they make the wrong read on the read option. Jaden Daniels takes it for 20, 30 yards, a touchdown. Maybe you get those big plays. I trust, and we got A.J. Brown. Hurts hasn't been able to find him. I trust Sainer still on Smith. Sainer still is playing really good football. I trust this Washington front 7 right now because not only is Bobby Wagner playing at the top of his game, John Allen seems to have found a good run of form.
Good call.
In these past couple of weeks, I think he had like 5 run stops against Detroit when they really couldn't find a run stop. And Deron Payne's playing well. It just seems like everything's working for Washington's defense. And they've also got the strongest tool of it all. They've got that thing that we talked about last week against Detroit. They're playing with the house money, man. There's nothing to lose, right? You're playing a divisional opponent in the conference championship when no one expected you to be higher than a top 10 pick. When everybody called your quarterback, he said he was going to be a bust. Nobody expected you to be here. If you lose, who cares? It was a great run, one of the best QB runs we've ever seen in the playoffs from a rookie. And if you win, it's immortalized in history. And then that is also going to work against Philly because you look at Philly, all the pressure's on them. If you don't win against Washington with this stacked of a roster, playing against Jaden Daniels and the power of friendship, I mean, Sirianni's job is on the line. Jalen Hurts' job is on the line. And if there's one thing this Philly team has proven to us over and over again, when the cards are on the table, when everything matters, when all of the marbles are up for grabs, they don't perform. Not consistently, but really, when you look at all of the biggest moments against Kansas City in the Super Bowl, they didn't perform in a close game. They could not close it out. Their wins that season were great, but it was a blowout win in the conference championship against San Francisco, right, with Brock Purdy injured. And then before that, it was a blowout win against the New York fucking Giants. Like, nobody cares.
Christ.
Then last year, you lose against Tampa Bay in the first round. This team has proven time again with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni that they can't perform when they're under pressure, when it's a big game, when it's a close game. So I'm going to pick Washington because I believe in Jaden Daniels. I believe in Dan Quinn. I believe in the matchups for him. But most importantly, I just think that they're going to be the team that wants to win.
If the Eagles can't get pressure and they need their linebackers to hold on a little bit longer than they want in hook zones and hold on to their man in the scramble drill, or they need their linebackers to contain Jaden Daniels sideline to sideline. You know what doesn't help? They kind of have a hole defensively now, a hole that they haven't had for most of the season. Nakobe Dean is done for the playoffs, and in his place has stepped Oren Burks, who, he's looked okay, a veteran presence, hasn't busted a lot of coverages over his last 4 games. 8 missed tackles, 14 of 14 in coverage for 90 yards. But still, you don't have that athletic presence flying around. And I know that Jaden Daniels has his eye on that. Again, this is a Commanders offense that has been multifaceted. They can hit you deep. They can run the ball. But they can also attack the short middle of the field. And against a defense that's as good as the Eagles is, any potential liability, you've got to go at it. You have to be willing to exploit it over and over. That being said, I do think that things are going to be easier for the Eagles. I want to call the upset. For the record, I hope it's the Commanders in the Super Bowl. Jaden Daniels would be the first rookie quarterback to start a Super Bowl ever, right?
He would be, yes.
Let's hope for it. But I've got Philly 28-24.
That's fair. I really considered picking Philly. It's a tough tough game to call, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Philadelphia. I just maybe it is a little bit wishful thinking, but I believe in Washington, and if I'm going to go down picking one of these teams in a game I really see as a 50-50, I'm going to go down picking Washington. But yeah, another it's just that Nakobe Dean going down, it hurts Oren Burks, and then for the run game, everybody's talking about, well, Philly's going to be able to destroy Washington. Washington's not going to get anything on the ground. Maybe that happens. Or maybe Jaden Daniels just went insane in zone reads last week. Philly picks up on that, and now we have to decide, do we want to key in on Daniels on these read option plays, these zone read plays? Do we want to key in on him? If so, you are leaving the middle of the field. You are leading the box. You are leaving the run concept one man down. And against a Washington run game that has been very proficient this year, against just overall, they were top 5 in yards per game, but against light boxes, they were incredibly good. If you're leaving that box a man down to guard Daniels on the zone read, that's going to make it really easy for Brian Robinson to push. That's going to make it really easy for Biotish and Allegretti to push guys in the inside zone game. So that just adds another issue. It's a great example of how that mobile quarterback can really affect games, even if he's not using his legs.
Needs to be a big game for Cooper DeJean, which I think it helps that Washington isn't very effective at attacking from the slot, so he can kind of turn those eyes early and key in on the run, but that's still a big ask from a rookie.
Yeah. And we need another De'Ami Brown legacy game.
Oh my God, De'Ami Brown finally!
Stringing them together.
This is awesome.
What a guy. Surely, Super Bowl MVP De'Ami Brown would go insanely hard. I mean, they would give it to Jaden Daniels, but Super Bowl MVP De'Ami Brown.
You think that when De'Ami Brown has 24 catches for 408 yards and 6 touchdowns, they'd still give it to Daniels?
Well, Jaden Daniels would be 24 for 24 with 408 yards and 2 touchdowns, so yeah.
Brown threw a couple of those scores to himself.
Oh, okay. Well, then that makes more sense. He's just getting exponentially better. He just becomes Calvin Johnson.
He's going to be able to play every position by the end of the season.
He's going to be Travis Hunter.
Late breakout.
Correct. Yeah.
We ready to move on to Bills Chiefs?
Yes, sir.
It's been a wild NFL season, but somehow it always comes down to the Bills heading out to Arrowhead as 2-point underdogs. I'm going to pick Buffalo in this game because I think they're better. And I think that bullshit is going to keep Kansas City in this one. But I think that the Bills have an extra offensive gear that people are kind of forgetting about because the Ravens game was close. Josh Allen averaged, how do I want to phrase that? Josh Allen had an ADOT of 6.2 yards, his second lowest on the season. I think that really exemplifies what Josh Allen does so well because he can go absolutely insane in the games where he has to, but he has gradually learned over the course of his career when things are easy, when you can't check the ball down, when you can't hit the middle of the field and kind of bruise these teams to death with the curl rods, that sort of strategy, he's willing to accept that. And I don't think that's what the game script is going to be against the Chiefs. I think he's going to have to throw some haymakers, but ultimately, I have faith that the Bills can do what they did in the regular season again.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. I'm going to come out and say it. I picked Buffalo, too, and I picked them by 10 points. Buffalo 30-20.
Okay.
Listen, if this is any normal team, Kansas City, if this is a normal team, I think we're all picking Buffalo really confidently. But KC's favored by 2 because they're Kansas City. And I get that. They've got the refs on their side, and they've got Patrick Mahomes. But also, to be clear, Josh Allen has the refs on his sides, too. Like, I'm all for bashing Patrick Mahomes. We should bash Patrick Mahomes for some of the stuff he does. Sometimes Josh Allen, he gets a call or two that maybe he wouldn't get if it wasn't Josh Allen. Not saying it is not a good thing. I'm not saying it's on him. I don't think he flops or anything. Well, sometimes he does.
They're 1A and 1B in terms of flopping.
Yeah, so it's like Mahomes will probably get more favorable calls, but he might be going up against his kryptonite, and that's really something that we've never seen. Allen's never really gotten those calls. He started to get those calls this year. So that's the matchup to watch. Referees versus who do the referees pick?
Well, I was wondering, does it cancel out?
Yeah, surely no, because, KC, they've got the power, but I don't know, man. It feels like the devil magic's running out. Every week, it just seems like they're getting worse and worse. And for a Super Bowl team and for a team that gets better when the playoffs come around, they were awful last week. It's a miracle they won in the first place. I know, and by 2 possessions at that. How did they win? They won by a few well-placed Spags blitzes which always happens. That's how Kansas City wins in the playoffs. We get Spags to call up an insane blitz, and they won by blocking malpractice from Houston, which is why I think Slowick got fired, because he refused to adjust to what he was seeing, and the offensive line could not handle it. You cannot put a tight end and a running back on Chris Jones in a third and gotta have it in the late fourth quarter. You just can't call that. And C.J. Stroud's got to audible out of it. But the thing about Slowick's
They
system,
double teamed him, you're saying.
That's the thing about Slowick's system is it gives the quarterback a lot less agency at the line of scrimmage to check the offensive line protection. So that's not entirely on Stroud. But either way, let's talk. How is that going to translate against Buffalo? It's not. Buffalo has been one of the best pass protection teams in the league. Not only have they been one of the best pass protection teams in the league, they've been one of the best at adjusting to what they see from the other team. They've been so good at doing whatever the other team's doing and beating them in that way. You put Chris Jones on the edge like they've loved to do this entire time. Guess what? You're facing the anti-Chris Jones offensive tackles, the massive athletes in Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, two massive athletes who can play the position very well. Chris Jones, how does he win? He wins through, I'm going to beat you through athleticism, or I'm going to beat you through technique. It's going to be a lot harder for him. And if he's on the interior, Allen's really good against pressure, man. Allen is going to sidestep him. So, and when you don't have Jones, you're going to bring the nickel blitz. Guess what? You've got running backs in the backfield, Ray Davis and James Cook, two of the best guys picking up blitzes in the league. Cook's gotten a lot better at that. So, your main thing, your fastball, what you go to, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, 3-2 count, you're not going to have it on defense. So now we have to drop back 7 into coverage and just hope Josh Allen doesn't beat us. Well, that's not going to work. Josh Allen is going to beat them. And also, how are they going to stop the run? This has not been an especially efficient run defense. They've been good, but they might just get out-talented at the point of attack, and even if they don't, James Cook's can cook up something. The 6 offensive linemen, KC's been really bad against teams that roll out 6 offensive linemen. So I don't see a way KC's going to stop Buffalo, and even if they do, and they get it to 3rd and 9, Josh Allen's just going to get a bucket. So I just don't understand how KC's going to consistently stop Buffalo's offense today. And if they can't stop Allen, Mahomes and the Chiefs have proven to us time and time again this season that they can be stopped. So how do you win?
The Chiefs are definitely playing worse. I'm not going to deny that. But to suggest that the devil magic is running out, they're still here, aren't they? You remember mid-season when they played the Panthers close and had to drive down the field, and I think they kicked a field goal to win that one. Then it came down to a bad snap against the Raiders. They made adjustments, and they're still here. And that, I think, exemplifies the way that they want to win this game, because they're not going to be able to out-talent the Bills. There are a lot of teams in the NFL that the Chiefs can't out-talent, yet they have one real loss on the season, which happens to be to the Buffalo Bills. They want to slow this game down. They want to have a high success rate on the ground, and they want to attack the Bills at the first and second levels of the defense. Having Matt Milano back is big, and we all saw him swat down that pass on the 2-point conversion. That was an impact play. I'm going to be real with you. I kind of haven't felt him when I've watched the Bills outside of that since he's returned. I don't think he's been the same elite zone defender that we're used to. I still think he's playing a step slow. Maybe he has a really excellent game here. But when you combine that with the ref bullshittery, which I don't want to count on that, but it feels so tangible that I can't count it out. I just think that the Chiefs are going to be moving the chains a lot, and I think they're going to play defense against Josh Allen by not letting him have the ball very often.
That's fair. To the refs thing, I honestly think we might get lucky in this one.
It's possible.
Because of how egregious those calls were last week.
Makeup game.
Like, there might be a makeup game. Like, a slight one where it's like, it's not even a makeup game. Let's just call this game straight, right? Let's just call what we would normally call and not factor in the Mahomes part of it. So that is a fair argument, but they want to play slow. I agree. They want to limit the amount of possessions, force a close game, and in the close game, they're really good at doing that. How are you going to play it slow against Buffalo? Buffalo has proven time and time again they can stop the run. And we were really worried about last week. If the Ravens win, it's because Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson ran wild. They didn't. I mean, Derrick Henry had a good game. They had a good running game.
Derrick Henry kind of did, though. I just think they didn't give him the ball enough. It was early turnovers. If the Ravens give Derrick Henry the ball, I think that they at least force Buffalo to really come out swinging.
Yeah, which is fair. But KC doesn't have Derrick Henry.
You're right.
They do not have a single ounce of juice in this rushing offense right now. Last week, they ran the ball for 50 yards in the ground, 2.3 yards per carry.
They have Derrick Henry if Derrick Henry was slow as hell.
Yeah, they have Derrick Henry if Derrick Henry sucked. So, yeah, okay, let's run the ball. Buffalo has consistently shown this season, I feel like, their bad running games have come against really good running teams. If you're a top 5 rushing offense, you have a chance to beat Buffalo's run game. But if you're in the bottom 27 of teams in effectiveness in the run game, Buffalo is going to win it. They're going to win the trench battle. And KC's definitely in that bottom 27 right now. So I don't see how you run the ball consistently. So that puts a lot more pressure on Mahomes, who's been considerably more inconsistent this season. That puts a lot more pressure on Travis Kelce. He showed up last game, but still he had a drop. There was some inconsistency there, and that puts a lot more pressure on your wide receivers to win underneath against a Bills defensive front, especially those Bills cornerback rooms who love to play the cover 2, and they love to just sit there and wait for you to make a mistake. And I think we're going to see a lot of 3rd and 8s in this game, and I think that's what's going to come down to. If Mahomes can convert those 3rd and 8s every time, great, it's going to be a close game. But if he can't, I don't see a path to victory because you're just going to need a vintage Mahomes game here, and there's no other way. And then another thing is, the Bills got out to an early lead against Baltimore, and that is why we saw some of those. We saw some of less carries for Derrick Henry. The Chiefs have really struggled against leads this season as well. They just haven't let him happen. They've struggled because they just haven't faced him that much, so it's kind of a low sample size. But when the Broncos had a lead against them, they barely won.
They should have lost that game.
And they should have lost that game. It's against Denver. Buffalo plays very well with the lead. So you want to keep it close, limit the amount of Josh Allen possessions. If you go 3 and out first possession, Josh Allen gets the ball, goes up 7-0, that legitimately could be the end of the game with the way that you want to play this game. Now, they could easily come out and just prove me wrong. They probably will because it's Patrick Mahomes. But the way they've played this season is not conducive to winning it all. And against Buffalo, it feels like the levee's finally going to break. I think Buffalo wins it by a considerable margin. I think they're the better team. I think they've got the quarterback playing the best right now. I don't see an area where Casey's really got the advantage. But Casey's probably going to win because we can never have anything as a football community. But Buffalo should win.
I think you're absolutely right in that the Chiefs can't win this game just by dinking and dunking. They have to unlock some semblance of verticality that they haven't had all season. Kind of a question I have right now is, without Tyreek Hill, is Patrick Mahomes even a good deep ball thrower? Because his adjusted completion percentage over 25 yards, his adjusted completion percentage over 20 yards is 25%, 39th of 43 quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, Caleb Williams, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Jacoby Brissett are his peers. He's going to need to get it together, and I'm not saying that's all on Mahomes. I mean, some of that is strategic, not overthrowing your man and sailing it out of bounds as opposed to leaving it where the cornerback has a chance at it. It doesn't help when Xavier Worthy's been getting bench pressed off his routes for half the season, but they're going to need to generate explosive plays, which just from a physical perspective, they can't do in the run game. They don't have players with any burst. Taylor Rapp is out for the Bills, and that's, a relatively small omission, but that's a player who plays probably 80% of their safety snaps. And there's probably a better way to phrase that, but that's a player who is a rotational guy to a starter in their safety room. And the Bills have actually been kind of vulnerable to deep shot this year. I think that that's the Chiefs' path, and there's a nagging part of me that's like, what if he's saving it? I know that he's not missing throws on purpose, but what if the one game where they need to have the deep ball, the gotta have it situation, what if Patrick Mahomes turns it on? That's what makes me so nervous about this game.
That's fair. But, it's like it takes 2 to tango. If Patrick Mahomes is turning it on, the deep ball, that's great. Receivers need to get open. They need to get open deep. They haven't done that this season. Worthy You just put Benford on Worthy and tell him to play press coverage.
Done.
Yeah, he's just not going to be a factor in this game. So if you think he's running a deep concept, you put Benford on him, it's over. Like, you need your wide receivers to step up, and they just haven't this season. Travis Kelce can only do so much, especially at this point in his career. And like you said, there's no explosives.
It's not in the tank.
Right there. And then you also got to factor in that how much is Mahomes going to be under pressure? We know Allen's probably not going to be under pressure too much, and even when he is, he's not going to get sacked that much. Mahomes doesn't have the highest pressure to sack ratio in his career, but overall in the season especially. And the way the Bills' defensive line is playing right now, man, it's going to be hard to keep him out because what are you running right now? You're running Tooney at left tackle. He definitely showed some weaknesses last week.
He's an all-pro guard.
Yeah.
He's not an all-pro left tackle.
He's an all-pro guard, Pro Bowl, maybe like a tier below Pro Bowl. He's a Pro Bowl-ish tackle. And against Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter last week, he really got exposed. Not exposed, but he's a guard, and that's okay, but you don't have a better option at tackle, so you threw him there. Von Miller, he's playing well.
I think he had one pressure last game.
He had one pressure, and that was it. But as far as, I don't know, I noticed Von Miller a lot last game as far as just not necessarily getting pressure, but keeping Jackson in the pocket.
Being impactful in other ways.
He played the gap discipline very, very well last week, which is really important against Jackson. And that is one of the most important things against Mahomes, which is how he beats you. He forces you to go out of your gap, and Miller's going to play well. Greg Rousseau, does Tooney have the athletic tools? Does he have the hands to stop Rousseau if he goes for a bull rush, if he goes for just a speed rush around the edge? If he hits him with a spin move like Rousseau loves, does he have the athletic tools to stop that? And even if he does, you look inside, you got Mike Caliendo and Trey Smith playing guard for you. Neither of them are the most consistent in the pass game. Ed Oliver's on a fucking tear right now.
Yes, he is. Good call.
He's going insane, and that's going to be my matchup to watch because if you've got Von Miller and Greg Rousseau playing very well, very good gap discipline on the outside, you're not letting Mahomes through the B gap, and you've got Ed Oliver wreaking havoc over them in the interior. Where is Mahomes going to go? So that just adds another layer of difficulty for Kansas City. It just feels like they're going to be playing upfield all day on both sides of the wall. So on both sides of the ball. So I'm going to pick Buffalo.
I also don't want to make it sound like I'm saying Von Miller is a bad player at this phase. I mean, as a designated pass rusher, he ate Garrett Bull's lunch, though, in that Broncos game. I think he had 5 pressures and a pair or so of quarterback hits. No. He could still turn it on for this one and even potentially give a Joe Tooney a bad game if they want to go the other direction and have Greg Rousseau rushing against, I can never remember his name, the tackle who false starts every play. Yeah, who I think leads the league in penalties. However, this is going to be a very awkward segue into, I do think that you have a little bit more faith in the Bills' offense than I do. Like you mentioned, it takes 2 to tango, and it's certainly not Josh Allen out there alone. However, I don't want to pretend everything is perfect on that side of the ball either. Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown have had very strong seasons. They're both up there as far as pass blocking efficiency. However, I think that they're the most penalized tackle duo in the league. And if Josh Allen is constantly forced to convert 2nd and 20s, he can do it. I mean, he can do it better than the vast majority of quarterbacks in the NFL, but against Kansas City, who's so effective at limiting explosive plays and capitalizing when they get teams on bad situations, I think that's a tough way to live. And then the wide receiver play for the Bills. It's at least a modest concern to me because you can't count on Keon Coleman. And you can't count on Amari Cooper, certainly not against Trent McDuffie in a very physical Chiefs cornerback room. That's why I think this needs to be a Khalil Shakir game. I think that they need to attack the slot and pepper him with targets, allow him to do some work and run after catch. Leo Chenal needs to have a strong coverage game. He's been a fantastic run defender this season. He has his limitations in coverage. There cannot be missed tackles for the Chiefs. They are going to have their backs to the wall against a very high-powered Bills offense, and that's why I've got the Bills 28-27.
Yeah, absolutely. It does need to be a Khalil Shakir game, and that does concern me. What if we just can't find a consistent way to get the ball out? And it is an issue, but even then, I think it's a 50-50 game.
Me too.
If you can't get the ball out. So I feel like the Bills have a higher margin for error than Kansas City has. And Kansas City's been playing games this entire year where every single game they've had a higher margin for error than the other team has. The only team that they've played where they hadn't had the higher margin for error was Buffalo, and they got beat by 9. So now they could have won that game, to be clear. The 30-21 looks bad.
That was a close game deep into the fourth. However, I think you would say that the Bills were pretty clearly, not definitively, but pretty clearly they're the better team.
And Kansas City looks worse. They've gotten worse the entire. That was the best game that, if you want hope as a KC fan, which I don't know, I don't want you to have hope.
They're really hurting for hope right now.
I want you to have a lot of hope. Yeah, no. I really think that if I would be worried if all of the media was picking Buffalo, but it seems like it's about 50-50 split. I would be worried if KC fans were like, oh, nuts, we're going to lose this game. But Kansas City fans this entire postseason have been praying that Buffalo would beat Baltimore because they didn't want to play Baltimore. You're about to see why Buffalo is a really good team. You're about to see why they're the 2 seed. You're about to see why we picked them both last week and were correct in the closest game, in one of the closest games of the season. But I would be worried. But since the Chiefs don't really have like that, they're the underdog mentality. There's not going to be a surprise for the Chiefs. If they win this game, it's not going to be a big surprise to anybody. So you can't get your heart broken too much. And I think that plays in the Bills' favor because I think if everybody was picking the Bills, Kansas City would win just because,
That's how it works.
Right? Like, and they're probably still going to win. But you know what? I don't think they do. And ultimately, Josh Allen, I just think he's going to be on a mission. This is your time. This is your chance. You got to do it now.
He's got something to prove.
You got to do it because you can't lose 4 to Kansas City. Losing 3 in a row in the playoffs, not 3 consecutive years, but they're 0-3 against Kansas City in the playoffs. You got to do it this time. If you can't do it this time, this is your best chance at a Super Bowl you're going to have in a very, very long time. You just beat your toughest challenge of the year. You're going up against a Kansas City team that is not going to look this weak for another 5 years at least. They're going to retool. They have some more cap space. They're getting rid of some guys. Though, I mean, they're not going to have Chris Jones or Travis Kelce in 5 years. We'll see how that pans out. There's no guarantee you ever see a Chiefs team weaker than this. Other side of the ball, other side of the football, you got Eagles and Commanders. The Eagles are in a bad streak of form right now. Washington is
They're awesome, but they're Washington.
Yeah, exactly. So this is your best chance not only to beat Kansas City, but to win a Super Bowl and finally get the thing Buffalo has been clamoring for 35 years. So it's more than just a game today on Sunday for Buffalo. It's more than just a game for their fans. They have to win it, and all of the talent differentials, all of that, plus the fact that they are going to be playing harder than they've played in any game in their entire lives, I just can't pick against Buffalo.
This is going to make me look like an idiot, about 60 hours from now. But I think Josh Allen is pretty clearly the better quarterback in this game.
See, okay, I think that's where I disagree with you. I think he is right now. This season, he has been clearly the better quarterback. I don't think QB play changes as much over the years as we said. I think there's something about Mahomes this year. The tools, I don't think that this is really him. I still think Mahomes is the best quarterback in football, but I think Allen's in the same tier now because entering the season, I think we had Mahomes in a clear tier, and you had Allen, Jackson, and Burrow in the tier below that. I think they've all jumped into that same tier for me. I wouldn't say that though.
If Josh Allen wins this game, would you say it that or still no?
If Mahomes looks bad, I think yeah. I think I wouldn't say he's the best. I still couldn't just because you cannot discount what Mahomes has put on tape for the last 5 years.
He just knows how to win.
Yeah.
I hate to be that guy, but it's real. It's tangible.
But Allen does too, and you look at every game he's ever played against Kansas City, he's put together his best game. He has. So, and the defense has always let him down. So this time, if the defense even plays up to par, close to up to par, with the way Kansas City's playing, they will. Josh Allen's not going to let you down. If I have to put my trust in a QB to not let me down in this game, I'm going to pick Allen, I think. That's where we'll agree. I think I'd pick, if I had my choice of quarterbacks in this game, I'd pick Allen.
You just know he's listening to this right now.
Yeah.
Gassing him up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what you got to do, Josh.
Yeah.
Get it done for us.
Please,
We're all counting on you.
Please. Also, everybody making those Black Hole Sun edits on TikTok. It didn't work the last 18 times. Let's stop making Mahomes and the Chiefs. Let's stop giving them bulletin board material, please. Can we just let the players win the game in silence? Can we let Allen win the game in silence?
I think that's what they deserve.
Yeah. I want Kansas. I want them to go out ugly. 34-0. I want it to be 39-2 for Scorigami, so it's always remembered.
7-6.
7. Oh boy. Which team?
Bills, obviously.
Of course. Butker misses.
2 safeties and a field goal.
Butker misses from the exact same distance he missed in the 13-second game.
I just want to see a goddamn Chiefs field goal hit the upright and then not go in.
I just want to see the Chiefs lose. I want to see them lose.
Oh, we've been starved for too long.
Yeah, but
The wait is over, we hope.
I feel like it has to be, right? This has to be the game for Buffalo. Like it has to be. I don't know what to say. There is no other way. There is no other time that you would ever feel this confident about Buffalo if you can't get it done now. Like, who can and when? Who can?
The Chiefs consistently blur the line between what is real and what is clutch and what is just lucky bullshit. And it's been my prediction essentially all season long that eventually it will come crashing down and they will lose one of these close score games. It's got to be now.
Yeah. I have a question for you, though. Everybody's been saying this week, this AFC Conference Championship game, this is the Super Bowl. Whoever wins the NFC, doesn't matter. This team's going to win the Super Bowl. What do you think? Is
No.
This the Super Bowl? No?
Now, I think if the Commanders somehow win that game, then this is the Super Bowl. But I think, and I've held this take for a while, the Eagles are so freaking talented that even though they don't have the best coaching, even though they don't have the best quarterback play, there are game scripts where they can just do their thing. They can hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley. They can squeeze the other team and force a couple turnovers, and that's enough. I've thought that they were true Super Bowl contenders for probably about 10 weeks now, and even though they've had some ugly wins, well, you know who else has had ugly wins?
Yeah.
That it's real. Teams can win ugly to the Super Bowl if they're built the right way, and I think that that's possible for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so freaking talented, and they're so well coached that's the thing. This team is never going to get blown out, which is why you can never 100% assuredly pick against them. That's why you can't call this the Super Bowl, because Kansas City, Philly, that would just be an awful game.
That would suck.
Like, I root for Philly, and I would root for Philly there, but it's like, man.
At that point, I think I would just root for the Chiefs.
Cancel the Super Bowl. Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Add to the Patrick Mahomes legacy,
The
passes up Tom Brady.
Oh, boy. No. Hell no. No, but that would just be an awful game. It would be an ugly game,
Terrible.
too.
Is Chiefs Eagles, would that be a Super Bowl rematch of one of the very early Super Bowls?
I mean, the rematch was like 2 years ago. So what does that mean? No, maybe like Super Bowl 3, right? Because after Lombardi won it, after the Packers won it twice, the Chiefs beat the Eagles.
I'm searching it up right now. I also have this weird brain rot where I can never remember who won the Super Bowl for about 5 years after the Super Bowl. Like, I'm just starting to be able to remember that the Patriots beat the Falcons. No, I don't think that one's ever happened before.
No, I mean,
2 years
Chiefs beat
ago.
the Vikings, but
That's surprising. I don't know. It feels like I can see the old Eagles logo and the Chiefs with the sort of washed out colors on a
Yeah.
Super Bowl banner. Just looks right to me. But it would look wrong in 2025. Let's not get that matchup, please.
yeah, Bills Commanders, you can't lose, man. Either
Exactly.
Allen gets his first ring or Jaden Daniels makes history.
Game would be fun as hell as well,
It would be
whereas
super fun.
Chiefs Eagles would authentically end like 21-17.
Yeah, and it would just be like, well,
Someone
okay.
had to win it.
Yeah, sure. Like, who cares?
Get rid of the playoff overtime rules for that one. Allow a tie.
Exactly. Well, don't even allow a tie. Make them both lose. Maybe let's hope the Dark Knight Rises scene.
We give it to Josh Allen anyway.
Oh man,
We
You
can
know what?
pray.
Bills Commanders would be fun. Bills Eagles, that would be a fun game. I think. You'd root
It
against
would
the
be,
Eagles. I think
yep.
that'd be more fun.
Two very differently constructed teams squaring off.
Chiefs Commies is literally just David versus Goliath. Like, I've never
Exactly.
seen a more David versus Goliath game in my entire life. And then Chiefs Eagles is hell.
Hell.
Yeah, we're all this is the bad place.
All right, so we've got some postmortems for you for the divisional round losers, and I don't have the games in front of me, and like I mentioned, I'm very bad at remembering what happened last week right after it happened, so Victor, you're going to have to take the upper hand on this one. Who lost?
All right, well, we'll take it through it as we did last week. We'll go from AFC to NFC, highest seed to lowest seed, and that means that we are starting out with the Baltimore Ravens. And man, what a way to end a season.
They didn't do the thing. They didn't overcome their demons. Their demons got them again. That being said, they were very much in that game, and I thought it was a very nice show of resilience from Lamar to come back from an authentically bad first half where he looked like the playoff choker that he's been labeled as in the past, and battle back, look like the regular season version of himself, and put his Ravens in position to, they wouldn't have necessarily taken the game to overtime, but probably more often than not take the game to overtime. How much time did the Bills have to drive?
1:33 and 2 timeouts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's...
I thought it was sub 1 minute.
Even when they scored, I was like, I think they scored too quickly.
But even so, they blew a 2-point conversion before that as well.
But you still had a chance because, okay, Allen might have gone, he probably would have gone down, you would have gotten the field goal. Tyler Bass misses a lot of kicks.
Absolutely.
Also, what if they go 3 and out and you just get the ball back with a minute to go? Then Lamar's the actual hero. You take it down, Tucker gets his redemption, and you win 30-27. So this game could have gone really differently.
One thing I will ask is, watching that game, it's clear that the slick field was impacting it in a very real way, I thought. I mean, Lamar just had the ball slip out of his hands. Mark Andrews got stripped trying to make a man miss in the open field. And Mark Andrews slips and then misses a body catch where the issue is not turning upfield too early. How often do you see NFL caliber receivers just look the ball in and have it bounce off their chest? How much of this do you think is the Ravens playing way uptight and not being able to overcome their playoff struggles that we've heard so much about versus they kind of just didn't adapt to the field conditions very well?
See, I think we can apply this to playoff struggles, but I think it's in a different way. People talking about how snow is bad for the sport and it makes it an illegitimate win. I disagree.
I disagree too.
It's obviously it's fun to watch, but if you want to be the world champion, if you want to be the NFL champion, you want to win the Super Bowl, you want to be the best team in football, it's not just going to be sunny in 70 every day. You need to go out there and play through whatever. It's like when a play breaks down or a wide receiver slips. You need to make the best of a bad situation. You need to be able to play in any environment, any situation, adapt, and the Bills just did a better job of that in that game. So that just proves more that the Bills deserve to win that game because, I mean, they both played great games, but ultimately the Bills adapted to the field conditions better, and that matters. You need to be able to roll with the punches and play with what is given you. You cannot play perfect all the time. So that's why I think that narrative is a little bullshit.
And I think that kind of points toward a broader idea about football in general, which is that it's really, really hard for teams that are only good at one thing to win the Super Bowl. Now, the Ravens are a very multifaceted team, but really when you have any weakness, it feels like it's going to get picked apart, in particular in the playoffs, and kind of an unfortunate weakness to have show up. You don't play very well in the snow. But I still think that it was a strong season from the Ravens, okay? It had a disappointing ending, but this team kind of established an offensive identity that we've never seen before from them with Derrick Henry. They had their early season struggles where they didn't look like a Super Bowl contender, and then they put it together and became a terrifying team that nobody wants to face. And I don't see why they can't run it back next year. I don't see the factor that says they can't be just as good and they couldn't win the Super Bowl next time around.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you know what? Derrick Henry's going to be a year older. That's a factor, of course. You may lose Todd Monken. That's a factor.
Possible.
You know, but the Cowboys are going to hire Schottenheimer, and he's probably the team that if he gets hired, it'll be the Cowboys. So, you know.
And also Derrick Henry's getting better with age. So.
That's true. He'll be 40 and just insane.
And his stiff arm, instead of like a stiff arm push and hold, it's actually just going to be punching guys in the face. It feels like it's progressed that way throughout his career.
He's going to have the Venom symbiote arm where he's just going to wrap the goo is going to wrap it around the defender's helmet, just going to throw him into the stands, and then he's going to score a touchdown.
We're going to see that in the offseason.
Yeah.
See some clips of that.
So Derrick Henry's just going to get older and better. They can run it back. I truly agree, and I think they'll be a really good team next year. They'll be a Super Bowl favorite. But at what point, if you're a Ravens fan, do you get tired of, okay, we beat ourselves. We got a good chance next year, though. Let's just come back next year. Because it's been a few years now. Last year, well, we beat ourselves against the Chiefs 17-10. We couldn't score more than 17. We didn't deserve to go to the Super Bowl. So maybe next year. The year before that was the Buffalo game, right?
Was it? I think
How
so.
did they lose that one?
Again, I'm not the one to remember that.
Let's look up Ravens playoff history. But it's just a consistent, like, over the past 7 years, right? It was at first it was Lamar. He's a young quarterback. We got a lot to look forward to. But then, he really comes into his own. And then, they lose to Buffalo in 2020, right? And then, Lamar's injured, so you lose to Cincinnati in 2022. That hurts, right? But at what point, dude, it's just like, sure, we can say we'll be able to be here next year because we've got good coaches, we've got good quarterback, but I wanted it this year. Like, I wanted it this year, and there's no guarantee we'll be here next year. Now, this is a really bad beat for Baltimore, obviously, but I don't think something has to change, but it really feels like something should change. I don't know what that is, though.
I think that conversation about teams that are good every year but struggle to make it to the Super Bowl or even get over the hump in the Super Bowl. I look at the 49ers. You can have the same sort of conversation about the Eagles, although they obviously did get one. I kind of don't know what to do with those teams because winning a Super Bowl is so ridiculously high variance. You have to say, okay, is this something tangible? Is it coaching? Is it quarterback play? Is it the way that we play football in general? Is it the way that we game plan? Or have we kind of just gotten bad luck and gotten cold at the wrong time consistently? I look at how good the Ravens are and how I think they have the possibility to get better over the offseason, strengthen the offensive line a little bit. You have some young players who are going to put on some play strength, add some experience, be picking up stunts better, that sort of thing. Kind of reshuffle the cornerback group in a positive way, add depth on the back end. I think that they could be better because Derrick Henry is a consistent force who, obviously you're not expecting him to get better, but I think he can be the same. And Lamar this regular season, I think, was the best version of Lamar that we've ever seen. I have a lot of faith that they can be back here next year. I have the same type of faith in Baltimore, at least in the regular season, that I have in Kansas City, that I have in Buffalo. The big question is, can they do it in the playoffs? And I mentioned last episode that if Lamar wins this game, I think that he's conclusively elite for me. He certainly didn't prove that. He had a bad first half, but the way he rallied, I think, is the best version of playoff Lamar that we've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
I think the arrow is going up. I think they're trending in the right direction, and I think they can run it back for a stellar season next year, even after a really disappointing ending where they lose a close game against a great team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So these perennially great teams with great quarterbacks, well, we should have won by now. You know what? Sometimes you don't always. You're not every team's Kansas City. Not every team's New England. It's hard to win one when Kansas City's playing, right? Breeze and the Saints, they won one. It was a great one. Rodgers and the Packers, they won
One.
Yeah, they won one. It was a great one.
That was early in Rodgers' tenure as well.
Yeah, Peyton, well, he won two, but he won one with the Broncos and he won one with the Colts. Two teams that had really great chances, right? So it could come later when they're 33 or whatever. And we'll be, if the Bills lose, we'll be having the same conversation when we do postmortems next week on the Bills because it's like this felt like the season. What do we have to do to get over the hump? Some of it is just that variance. Super Bowl is a really damn hard thing to win. So you will I think there will be a stronger team next year because you get to keep Zach Orr for another year at the very least. He'll surely be a hot head coaching candidate next cycle, but this cycle I don't believe he got any interviews because I think he's the first year DC after McDonald went to Seattle, and he's shown you that he is an elite defensive coordinator over the back half of the season. You get better pieces there. You shore up that corner room, as you said. Maybe you get Lamar another weapon in the receiving room.
That would be big.
That would be big. Another underrated thing, they were missing Zay Flowers. That does hurt.
Very true.
Buffalo was fully healthy. You got to give them that.
I mean, they don't really have a downfield winner without Zay Flowers.
Yeah,
that strips a dimension away from their offense.
Bateman had a good game. The Bateman agenda continues. But yeah, you get Lamar another piece. And the biggest thing in this game that gets you excited for next year is Lamar showed it in the second half. Yeah, the first half was bad, but it seems like he's improved every year in the playoffs. And maybe next year he will finally unlock it, and playoff Lamar will be a good thing rather than a bad thing, because he was nails in the second half. I mean, apart from a few missed throws here and there, but the 2 turnovers and the overall the first half was bad. It's not his fault that they lost this game, though. It's partly his fault, but it's not entirely his fault. So you can go to bed knowing Lamar showed a lot of progress. You'll be back next year. But yeah, it sucks that you lost this game.
It sucks big time.
It's going to suck for the whole offseason, but somebody had to lose.
And it's just like I always say, the NFL is exactly like fantasy football.
Yep.
Making it to the playoffs is skill. Winning the championship is all luck. No
Absolutely.
exceptions.
For sure. So, yeah, Baltimore, high expectations, but you'll think about this one for a while. On to our next team, which is going to be the Houston Texans. Now, this is a really weird one because the way you were playing, the way that the season is felt, I don't think you expected to be here. And so it was like, oh, you're playing with house money, you lose, it's Kansas City, whatever. But then you play a really decent game. You outgain Kansas City. It felt like you should have won this game, and that just makes it hurt a little bit. It just makes it sting in a way that you just didn't think was possible if you were a Texans fan. So adjustments have already been made. By the way, Bobby Slowick, offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, got the axe today. We'll see where they go next. But I don't know. Do you think they need to make any big changes heading into next season?
The Texans are a tough team because they are a fantastic football team when you look at the edge rush duo, how incredibly good Derek Stingley was this year, the way C.J. Stroud kind of righted the ship late in the season. But holy hell, their offensive line sunk them. And it surfaced repeatedly in that Chiefs game. I mean, how many sacks did Stroud take? Like 8? And he was pretty good outside of that. C.J. Stroud looks like he has his mojo back. You're not worried about that. But Stephon Diggs is getting up there in age. How old is Nico Collins? Like 26?
Yeah, you still got him for another few years. He's entering the prime of his career.
He's still well within his window. So this is a team that I think you can have high expectations for looking forward. But man, after what they did last year, you wish that they were a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more consistent. You wish that C.J. Stroud took a step up into the elite tier of quarterbacks. Is that a lot to ask for? Yes, but I also think it was attainable. So in terms of where they went from how they looked late season, where they didn't even look like a playoff team, going out there, making a statement, beating the Chargers, C.J. Stroud looks better, you hang with the Chiefs, you like that. I mean, sure the offensive line was bad. Kaimi Fairbairn sold in this game. He missed a field goal.
Have you ever seen a kick that low?
That was on a PAT, right?
No, it was a field goal.
That was a field goal try. From what, like 20 yards away?
Yeah, it was closer than a PAT, actually.
It was a line drive.
Yeah.
And he's been inconsistent all year long, so obviously getting a reliable kicker is tough, but it's kind of hard to go down from that spot. I mean, regression states that it's only going to get better from here. So I still think the Texans are a team with a lot to look forward to that is closer to the beginning of their Super Bowl window than they are to the end. Texans fans should be excited moving forward. You've got a lot of great young pieces.
100%. It really feels like this is the start of something great and not like the start of a what could have been. But it does just kind of feel a little like a lost season.
They got to fill in that offensive line, man. It was a non-starter.
Yeah, because it's just a lot of injuries, and Stroud didn't play up to par until the very end when he looked like the guy that you thought he was. So now you're like, okay, let's hope you take the next step next season, like we hoped you would take the next step this season. So it kind of just feels like a lost season, but this offseason can't be a lost offseason. You got to attack it. You really got to go for it. I don't know where they stand in cap space, but this needs to be a big free agency for them. You've got the stars. You have everything a Super Bowl team needs. You have your Super Bowl QB. You have your wide receiver 1 in Nico Collins, right? He's getting up there in age. It's arguable at this point, but you have your franchise left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. You have your big pass rush winner, the guy who can get you a bucket when it matters. Arguably, the way he played last weekend, a top 5 edge rusher, Will Anderson. You've got an all-pro cornerback in Derek Stingley. You have You have the fantastic top-end players and athletes that you need. You need to fill in the rest of the roster, though. Cannot be starting Blake Fisher at right tackle. That's another reason Slowick got fired. Fisher had just been awful at tackle the entire season. When he was below average at guard, and then it was just truly awful at tackle, and he just stuck to him. And maybe that was Ryan's, maybe that was Sloak. There's no way of knowing they shouldn't have stuck with him. There's a lot of offensive line issues I thought stemmed from Bobby Sloak this season, so it's important to find a good OC. Really important to get somebody who knows what they're doing. Fill out this team, fill out that offensive line, get better backups in your receiving room because Diggs and Dell are injury prone. You love it when they're healthy, but when you're not, you don't love it. The defensive line needs to be built out. We need some more linebacker depth. We need some more corner depth. We're probably good on safeties, but who knows? Just fill out this team, get some rotational guys, get some backups, get some pretty decent starters that can fill in at number 2 for those big positions. Give Stroud the support he needs. Give this defense the depth it needs to carry a Super Bowl run. Get a good OC, and we're looking at a really good future.
I've got 2 more talking points before we move on to our next team. The first one is that, man, if this team did have a good offensive line, it's not just the pass game, where I think C.J. Stroud is a lot more comfortable when he can stick tightly to a process and get the ball out quickly and win with his processing, but the run game. Joe Mixon was fantastic this season. He was just, I think, dead last among qualified rushers in rushing yards before contact as well as expected yardage. I think they've got control of him into next season, unlike Stephon Diggs, who's on a 1-year contract. It's just, out of all the liabilities to have, offensive line is a tough one because you can't fill it all in at one time. It's a reactive position, fundamentally, so it's harder to pluck guys from the draft who can plug right in, but then you also need guys to build chemistry over time, like you talked about. I think Laramie Tunsil was almost underrated this season, considering how trash everything else was, but he's way up there in age. So they do have to kind of build that unit from the ground up, and that's really, really tough because I do think that kind of awkwardly spaces out their winning window, since I don't think they fix it all next year. However, D'Amico Ryan's defense really came into its own down the stretch. It sometimes takes these defensive coaches a little bit to establish the culture and get guys on board with their terminology and really have these defenses firing and playing like one solid unit. And we saw that. If we can get a Brian Flores type of effect from D'Amico Ryans, they don't have to be perfect up front offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. D'Amico Ryans, that's another thing. You've got your guy at QB and you've got your guy at head coach, and he's a really young guy too, so he's going to be around for a while. Not only is D'Amico Ryans a genius defensive mind, but he's clearly a great culture guy. He's building something there in Houston that is really special because, we talked about sticking behind Blake Fisher. That may not be best for winning, but it's best for your players. You're showing your guys that I'm going to stick behind you no matter what. After you've had a rough game, I've got your back no matter what. So Ryan's fantastic head coach, a big hit. I loved him whenever he was a coaching carousel guy, and I don't understand how some people were saying he would fail because he's a DC. You can absolutely be a DC and still be a great head coach in the modern NFL. And D'Amico Ryans has proven that you just do have to have your OC on the other side of the ball, and he didn't. Slowick, it's insane that he was being talked about in head coaching conversations last year. He never should have been. I was starkly opposed to it when it happened, but he wasn't the guy. He just could not adjust to what was thrown at him. Clearly just a little bit too young for it. Get some more experience, maybe come back as an OC. But Houston, fix the offensive line, get a good offensive play caller. If you have to do 2 things, those are 2 things. But it's hard to fix the offensive line in one season. But if you do make investments into it, that absolutely can pay off. Look at the Denver Broncos. Actually, last year, 2 years ago, they made all these in free agency investments. Let's get Ben Powers. Let's pay him. Let's pay Mike McGlinchey. Quinn Miners is coming into his second year, right? So a lot of money there, a lot of talent there, but they didn't look cohesive. They didn't look great, and it was just not great. And what's going on? They're all good players individually. They didn't have that chemistry like you were talking about. It takes a while. And then this year they come out and they're the highest graded pass blocking unit in the league. So those investments, they do pay off. You just need to be a little bit patient with it.
I think it's natural to be concerned about Houston. I don't think you have to be worried. No. When you have your QB and your head coach and extremely talented, all-pro caliber talents on the defense, you're living good deep into the future.
Absolutely. Do you bring back Diggs?
I don't think they can, man.
No.
He looked good when he was out there. He wasn't prime Stephon Diggs, but he was still, I would say, an excellent wide receiver. part of me says sure, because I think you kind of have to reset the offense. You don't want to carry the second half Texans offense into the beginning of next season, because that's a great way to get into a funk early on. I do think that they need to spend money offensively, but like we've talked about, I would rather they deploy that cash to the offensive line and build a more balanced attack where you can run the ball, you can let C.J. Stroud do his thing.
And that's one of those things where maybe we get a receiver in the draft. Maybe we like somebody we see as more of an outside guy, right? Not in day one, because I think their day one pick probably should be an offensive lineman. If there's an interior guy on the defense that you just love, I don't think there's anything wrong. Also, we'll get a lot more to this in draft season. I'm a big fan of getting the best guy available rather than drafting for fit. If you can do both, great. But if you can't do both, I would more often side with BPA rather than position of best fit. Even though there are obviously some differences, you've got a great quarterback, and a quarterback's the best player. You're not going to take the quarterback, but,
Quinn Ewers is a Houston Texan.
So just, yeah, he'll be the best player available.
Exactly.
Pick. They're picking next year, right? When they're picking next year when a nuclear apocalypse has happened.
Correct.
Quinn Ewers is the only survivor.
The only one.
And they're still going to take him second overall.
Who else is there? Nico Yamaleava?
Yeah, sure.
Nah, I still think you'd take Nico over Quinn Ewers at this point.
Well, he goes 1, and Ewers goes 2.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But overall, I think you'd love to get an offensive lineman. You'd love to get an interior defensive lineman. Either of those in day one. But ultimately, if there's a guy you like, you go after him. But we will cover that over draft season. Draft season begin, and we're excited. We're getting to players. It's exciting. We'll have that content for you the second the Super Bowl is finished.
With the third and final pick in the 2026 NFL Draft post-nuclear apocalypse, the Green Bay Packers select Aiden Childs, Michigan State.
I would not be
Jordan Love
surprised.
died.
No.
Or maybe he was just that bad.
Yeah, they cut him. they're starting Aiden Childs. So would this be, because the Texans have the number 1 and the number 2 pick. So now they've got 2 guys in their roster. This is assuming. So these are the only GMs that survived?
It's just a fist fight.
Okay, yeah, so we've got
There's one player on both
Quinn
teams.
Ewers and Yamalave. Oh, yeah, you can only start one guy, of course.
Yes.
Right, so who do they start, Yamalave or Quinn Ewers?
QB competition.
Oh, yeah, that's the QB competition will exist long after mankind has overstayed its welcome on Earth. It is eternal.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to our third team, and we're pivoting to the NFC. We talked a lot about heartbreak, a lot about Buffalo in Baltimore, about, oh boy, this felt like the one, and it just feels worse in Detroit. Like,
hearts
man.
are broken. This was supposed to
Brutal.
be the year, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's just not the year,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the case here. They didn't have a defense. How are you going to win a Super Bowl when your entire defense is on IR and they were getting guys back? And I think what makes this all the more heartbreaking is, and this is a stupid way to put it, it kind of felt like God was on the Lions' side throughout the season. Like, Jared Goff can throw 5 interceptions, and they still find a way to rally and win that game in a meaningless Week 17 game against the 49ers, where it didn't matter who won or lost that game because they were going to play the Vikings, and that was going to decide whether they were the 1 seed or whether they were the 5 seed. They fell behind by like a touchdown or 10 points or so early, and I don't think anyone doubted that the Lions were going to come back and win that game just because of how resilient they are. Aiden Hutchinson goes down. Aleem McNeil takes a huge step up as a pass rusher. Aleem McNeil goes down. Levi Onwuzurike starts getting after the quarterback a little bit. I think that kind of plot armor that it felt like the Lions had for an extended part of the season made it feel impossible that they were going to lose to a rookie quarterback in the divisional round. But ultimately, I mean, when you look at these offensive matchups, yeah, it was going to be an easy game script for the Commanders to put up a ton of points, and then they did enough defensively to force mistakes out of Jared Goff. And that is where it goes from, okay, it wasn't your year, to I'm concerned about whether or not this team can win a Super Bowl. I think Jared Goff has firmly established himself as a tier 3 guy, because even if you make the layups 98% of the time, the 2% that you miss, if you're not a guy that can consistently hit the deep shot, if you're not a guy who can consistently make things happen, it's probably just going to come up once in the playoffs at least, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing teams that are extremely good in high variance game scripts most of the time. You need a quarterback who can do everything, and Goff just can't do everything. That's always been my concern with Goff. That's always why I didn't like paying him $55 million. But I think you can win a Super Bowl with Goff. It's just going to be really hard. It's like the Eagles winning a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. It's just having him as your quarterback versus it significantly raises the amount of times that you are just going to have worse games. Versus you'd love to have Josh Allen, of course, but even if you had like a Herbert or a Daniels, right, or even a Stroud, like that will make it so you at least you have a quarterback you can somewhat rely on in those high variance games because you can rely on Goff and Hurts to show up. But whenever you do get thrown into those scripts, you need a guy that you can go to and say, hey, you need to win us this game. And Goff isn't that guy. And that was made clear. It does suck. And it also sucks because you had two guys go down in this game alone. Brian Branch went down and Amik Robertson went down. He was a big part of the game plan. I guarantee it. Goes down, does not come back for the rest of the game. So many injuries. And it just feels like this was the year. And if this isn't the year, can next year be the year is now what we have to turn our attention to because you're losing both of your coordinators. Ben Johnson gets hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Congratulations to him. Aaron Glenn gets hired as head coach of the New York Jets. Congratulations to both of them. Both great coaches. Now you got to replace them.
As we got deeper into that game, it felt like you felt the missing pieces on Detroit's back end more and more. I think it was that now screen to Terry McLaurin where he split between two blockers, broke a tackle, and then kind of shrugged off another tackle on his way to a long touchdown. That was kind of my, oh shit, they just don't have the guys moment. They didn't have the guys who could tackle Terry, and they didn't have the guys who could catch up to Terry and potentially make a touchdown-saving tackle. And the Commanders just went after that over and over again. That being said, with a healthied up defense next year, I think there's a ton of reason to be optimistic. But now Aaron Glenn is gone, and where do you go with that? Have they made a defensive coordinator move yet?
I don't know. Now, offensively, it's believed that they're going to stay in-house and they're going to get Tanner Engstrand. I don't remember exactly what his position was before this. Let me see. But he's been kind of a guy that... Yeah, he's the passing game coordinator.
I think that's a good move.
He's kind of the guy that in-house they've been grooming to replace Johnson because obviously we've known for a while Ben Johnson was going to leave. He's one of the most anticipated head coach candidates in a very long time. Some people in NFL offices were comparing him to Shanahan or McVay, which is high praise, but that's the kind of guy that they think he is. So you knew you wouldn't have him at some point. So Johnson and Campbell have been grooming Enstrand to take over the offense. The defense, it seems like it's wide open. I don't know what it'll be because I don't think you have an obvious in-house guy, right? I'm failing to remember. There is, I think their defensive line coach took a job with the Patriots as defensive coordinator. That was his name. I can't remember his name. Or maybe that was the Texans. Am I going insane?
It doesn't look like it's not Terrell Williams.
Terrell Williams.
Oh, it is Terrell Williams.
Yeah. That may have been a guy that you like as DC, but he goes to New England to be their DC. So it's wide open for defense, and I'd say defensive coordinator is maybe more important than offensive coordinator for this team just because of how well built they are talent-wise on the offense. Defense has got less talent, and they relied on Glenn's scheme and his motivation and his coaching style, which is just pristine. One of the greatest coordinator jobs we've ever seen with Aaron Glenn this year. They relied a lot more on him even when they were healthy, so you need to nail that hire.
I totally agree with you that I think the offense is more likely to kind of solve itself with an in-house hire than the defense is because you just feel so good about that offense. You feel good, even if not in the playoffs, about well-protected regular season Jared Goff throwing to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And with Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't even know what to say to describe that run game. It's just one of the most explosive running backs of the last decade, a guy who incinerates pursuit angles. Watching NFL defenders try and tackle this guy, trying to get a hand on this guy, is something else. You get that player running through enormous holes on a mauling offensive line. Yeah, I think they're going to be okay on that side of the ball, even with fewer rollout fake trip plays and probably fewer tackle passes and tackle receptions. Their offense is going to be fine. Now, defensively, I like that you talk about the fire that Aaron Glenn brought to this defense, because I think that that's a huge part of how they play, and we're going to see how much of that is Dan Campbell and how much of that was specifically Aaron Glenn on this team's defense, because this is a hyper-physical, press-man style Detroit defense, and I think that there are aspects of that where schematically it's maybe not quite as difficult to coach as, say, a Fangio-style quarter scheme where you need safeties and linebackers and cornerbacks to effortlessly pass guys off, and you need to teach guys how to man match properly and play their triangles with precision so that you're not giving up all the underneath stuff. With Detroit, it's kind of run, hit, press, jam, play sound. However, we see repeatedly in the NFL the kind of culture that a defensive coordinator or a defensive head coach brings has a tremendous impact on how fast and hostile and willing to hit you these defenses play. I think I have more faith in Detroit to get this one right than I would the average team, because they bring that same kind of sentiment offensively. They're built in a very specific way, and I think that just maintaining the status quo with a healthy Aiden Hutchinson and a healthy Aleem McNeil back is enough for them to be a very strong unit next season.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And Glenn gets a lot of credit for this. I do think Campbell gets a fair share of credit, too. You got to share it. And you believe in Engstrand because he's the heir apparent to Ben Johnson. And I thought Terrell Williams, I was penciling him in for the DC job, and then he gets taken by the Patriots. We'll talk about the Patriots and all of the coaching hires. We'll talk about Glenn and Johnson on the Coaching Carousel podcast next week. Next week is going to be a loaded episode.
It's going to be like 4 hours.
Maybe. It's going to be as long as the Pro Bowl episode, probably.
I think it is.
It's going to be the Ballstock Sports Award Show, which has 11 awards. We have overall the same structure, but there are some Ballstock Sports.
Better awards.
Yeah, better awards. That's why we start with a B. There are more specific awards. There are better awards that the NFL just hasn't come around to, but they will eventually come around to. And then we will also, of course, do postmortems on the conference championship teams, and we will talk about the coaching carousel. Either in that week, probably that week, but maybe the Super Bowl week is instead. So Engstrand's going to be the OC probably. He hasn't been hired, but you just have to assume. It's important that you're not going to get Aaron Glenn because he's a once in a lifetime coordinator. You're just not going to get him, but it is going to maybe your job's a little bit easier because of what Glenn has done and how many great players you have and what a culture you have. And then also, the cool part about this season was, okay, all these guys got injured and a lot of guys had to step up in their absence. Guess what? All of those guys that got injured are going to be back, and all of those guys who stepped up are also back. We've got Aleem McNeil playing really good football alongside DJ Reader, who though he was back, and Levi, all playing. Hutchinson. Smith will not be with the Lions, probably, but
he wasn't that big of a factor for them regardless.
I mean, he did actually. He had a couple of impact plays.
He was an impact pass rusher for them, but they traded him in specifically to be an impact pass rusher because they were trying to compete for a Super Bowl. That was much more of a one-year rental, I think, than a long-term roster move.
Smith might be done. I mean, he's had some issues with coaches and being a good person in the past. So, but they have draft picks. Maybe they have cap room. I don't know. They'll probably have to pay some guys. But you've got a lot of talent. You got Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph back there, both very good players. Carlton Davis comes back from injury. Terrion Arnold comes back from injury. Amik Robertson, another guy that stepped up big time. You hope that he can be a really good outside cornerback for you. So there's a lot of hope, a lot of talent on this roster. If I'm worried about one thing is, can Jared Goff be that guy in the postseason, which I don't think he can, but I hope he proves me wrong. Anytime I say it's talk bad on a player, I hope he proves me wrong. I really do, because all of these guys, they work their ass off. They deserve success. So we're never rooting against a guy unless it's Deshaun Watson. We're never rooting against a guy unless it's Deshaun Watson, but sometimes we'll pick against them. But the other thing is Jared Goff simply a product of Ben Johnson?
Yes.
A thought that does yes, but
I don't want to say, let me rephrase that. He's not a product of Ben Johnson. I think that he's a very okay tier 3 type of quarterback who is a product of Ben Johnson in elite offensive surroundings. That's how I feel about Goff, which is why I think he can run it back next season and be at the very least a very good regular season passer.
I agree, but that's my worry with him. Is he a tier 4 quarterback without Ben Johnson? Is where my worry comes in, because you look at the first year in Detroit. Yes, the offensive situation was a lot worse. But the first year that he was in Detroit, he's been there for 3 years, they did not have Ben Johnson calling the plays. And all of the stats were bottom 15, bottom 12 for Jared Goff. He still looked like a tier 4 or a tier 5 quarterback, a fine player that you're okay with, but not a guy that you want as a starting quarterback. Definitely not a guy you want to be paying $50 million. So with Engstrand at OC, you have to, maybe he just continues Ben Johnson's legacy and is just a great fucking OC. But if he isn't, then maybe Goff has some issues and he has to create more. He has to make more is on his plate. And I worry that maybe he makes that drop down to a tier 4. But not all of it's on Johnson. When you have an elite offensive surrounding, such a great offensive line, great pass catchers, it's hard to fail. So I still think he'll be that guy in the regular season. I just think without Johnson, it's going to increase his postseason variance, which is already so high, and that's a big worry.
And that's just it. I think that they'll be okay because I think that they can be the same offensively with an absolutely stellar run game behind Jahmyr Gibbs. And then defensively, getting Aiden Hutchinson back is a pretty big deal.
Defense player of the year next year.
Well, I'll read you the stat and we'll see if you still think that. So the top 5 pass rush win rates in the NFL were Trey Hendrickson at 20%, fantastic player. Nick Bosa, one of the best pure pass rushers in the league. Micah Parsons at 20.2 has been elite as a pass rusher for several years now. And Myles Garrett, pretty good player, 23.1. You want to take a guess at what Hutchinson's was?
24.2.
38.3.
What the fuck? Oh my god.
I know that was against some backup tackles, but
Still,
Jesus Christ.
It was over the course of like 6 games.
He was 49.5% win rate in true pass sets.
You're right. That does change my opinion. He's going to be the fucking MVP.
What's above MVP? Can he be the commissioner?
I'll tell you what's above MVP. An award yet to be named that you can find out by watching the Balls Talk Sports Award show next week. An award more valuable, more acclaimed, more esteemed.
Better.
Than the MVP. Better. The Balls Talk Sports Award show. Tune in next week.
Stay tuned, folks.
Anyway, yeah. I think it's a good segue.
I think so.
You're happy with Detroit. Hope you can do the same next year. Now, getting on to the last team, and that is the Los Angeles Rams. This is probably one of the strangest maybe the strangest postmortem, because with Baltimore and Buffalo, in Detroit, it felt very clear, okay, still really good team, it just had a rough game, it happens, move on. And Houston, we were never going to win that, we were never going to go far. But Los Angeles, you were never going to go far, but it also felt like you could have. And you left a lot on the table, and Stafford's just getting older, and there's a lot of holes in this roster, which coaching has managed to cover up, but how long can we do that? And it's just like, I don't know if we feel secure at all in this team that we've got right now. But it's a good team. We went to the divisional and we competed against a really good Philly team. I feel like there should be nothing to complain about, but I don't feel confident they're secure in the Rams' future at all.
They kind of feel like they're the Saints, but like 2 tiers up from where the Saints are. As in, you can see the pieces, you can see a little bit of the vision, but where exactly do we go from here? Where is this leading us at this phase?
I mean, they're the Saints from like 4 years ago, right? A bunch of cap and aging
comparison.
Superstars. We've got Cooper Kupp and you got Matthew Stafford. And the second Stafford's arm starts to go, that's when he needs to go, because he's a great quarterback, but without his arm, he's not going to be a great quarterback.
It's going to look very Kirk Cousins-y, I think, when Stafford's arm starts to go.
Yeah, when Breeze without his arm, it wasn't as much of an issue. Towards the very last season, he just had no arm left. But without that arm that it was in his prime, it wasn't as much of an issue, just because his processor was the likes of one which we've seen very few times. He just could read the field so elegantly, and he was just perfect as an accurate passer. Stafford isn't all of those things. He's great at all of those things. He's just not on that level. The Drew Brees or Peyton Manning, when my arm goes, I can still make meaningful plays, you know. So when his arm starts to go, you don't know when that's going to happen because he's 35, 36?
Let me look that up real quick.
Like, it's already probably started to go a little. You don't have much of a future with him. So that's why maybe this year or next year you think about taking a guy. Jalen Milroe? Like,
oh, man. I could
mean,
kind of see that.
if there's anywhere I want him to go, I think it's probably here.
Coaching is good. The coaching's right for him.
Yeah. But it's also like, do we want to invest in Jalen Milroe when next year we could say, let's go out there. We're equipped to draft a project quarterback. Looks like next year there's going to be a lot better project quarterbacks available. Let's just wait till next year. Maybe we grab like Aller early. Well, probably Aller will probably go earlier than they will be. But maybe we grab a guy like Nico. I don't want to butcher his name, and I already did, and I'm not going to do it again. Maybe you grab a guy like Nico.
I think you got it right the first time. I think you said Yamaleava.
Yamaleava? Yeah, okay, let's say, is that how you say it? Okay. Nico Yamaleava, maybe you grab him in the very end of the first round, like the Ravens did with Flacco and Lamar. That could absolutely work. But that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Right now, Stafford's still a great quarterback, but he's probably not your quarterback 3 years from now. Maybe he isn't your quarterback 2 years from now.
He turns 37 on the 7th, February 7th.
Jeez.
And you touched on Drew Brees and how his arm started to go. I think part of that was, didn't he suffer some back injuries down the stretch, and it felt like that just sapped all of his arm strength, and he couldn't really be an NFL starter anymore? The thing with the Rams is they were kind of trying to get Matthew Stafford killed with those offensive line injuries, and that highlights a deeper concern. This is a pretty old offensive line, and it's just another unit where they're fine. In fact, when all 5 starters are out there, I think that this is, somewhere around a top 10 offensive line, definitely top half.
A lot of chemistry there that helps a lot.
But can you keep that on the field long enough to win a title? I think that that's a very real concern. You talk about Cooper Kupp. I'm actually not super worried about their receiving room.
No, you got Nakua. You're set.
And even Tutu Atwell's looked good in limited appearances. And
Robinson.
DeMarcus Robinson has looked great in limited appearances. I think that they can reload there. And defensively, I think they're in position to get better. The Rams are actually 11th in projected cap room for next season with about $56.5 million. I think you can do a lot to shore up the defense, maybe add some sand in the pants against the run. Obviously, Jared Verse was absolutely stellar this year. I'm not sure if he's still the favorite for Defensive Rookie of the Year. We'll cover that on the Balls Talk Sports Award show.
We will cover that. No giveaways.
So this is a team that is going to be really good next season because I don't think Matthew Stafford is just going to fall off. When we talk about quarterbacks whose arms tend to go, Matthew Stafford has always been a touch above Drew Brees as far as arm talent, his entire career.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just going to fall off a cliff and he's going to be low end.
You got to look at guys like Rodgers. He has a Stafford-level arm, and his arm maybe it's fallen off a little, but not that much.
He can still sling the football.
Exactly. And Stafford, if he had Rodgers' arm 3 years from now, he's still a plus starter.
And so that's where I'm at with the Rams. I think that they'll make it back to about this spot. Obviously, we talk about coach and quarterback, and they've still got that. I just don't know if they have the horses to make a deep run. I think what they need is a really good draft class. They got a huge rookie impact in Jared Verse this year. If they can hit on another guy or two, maybe that's enough to put them over the edge.
Yeah, I think you fill out the roster in free agency, but if you get a bona fide CB1 from this draft.
That would be huge.
That's important. You got to fill that cornerback room. That's your biggest weakness right now. Shula's done a fantastic job of covering up that weakness, so most people, it's not even like registering as a weakness sometimes because of just how solid that unit's been. You need a guy back there, right? Because you just have to have a guy. Well, this is a decent class for it. You're not going to get Hunter, but Ben Morrison may be there. Sharon Revel may be there. Guy I really like. Jede Barron from Texas. You know what I mean? There is a few guys there in that round 1 through 2 range that have the potential to be a CB1 for you. So it's important to go out there and get that and just fill out the roster. Get us some more depth because they were really top-heavy this year, and whenever they went down and they got hurt, it really showed. But yeah, you got Jared Verse, looks like a superstar. The offensive line, Havenstein has proven to us he can't stay on the field for more than 12 games in a season. Bo Limmer had a really shaky game. Now, it was against Jalen Carter, so
That's not a
that's a
good matchup for Bo Limmer.
It's a forgivable game because Bo Limmer's entire thing is I'm going to fucking truck you in the face, and you're not going to do that against Jalen Carter. So, yeah, he did cost you the game in the end. Like, Carter got the pressure and then he got the sack. Both of those Bo Limmer gave up. He should never been in a one-on-one situation against Jalen Carter. That was a bit of good work from Fangio on one of those plays to get him in a one-on-one, though. So I think you feel fine about that. You probably want the heir apparent to Rob Havenstein in the second round, third round maybe. That's something to target in the draft. But overall, you feel good. It's just you do need to have this offseason go right. Like, it'd be great if every offseason goes right, but if this one doesn't, then you probably close off the Stafford Super Bowl window. If you miss on your picks this year, if you don't get any big free agents, then the Stafford window may be closed.
I think it's actually pretty favorable for the Rams. This isn't a super top-heavy draft class in general. I think that you can get big guys, some nose tackle types down the board to help fill in against the run a little bit. This is a kind of a strange cornerback class in that the top-end talent, the day-one quality starters, you're obviously not going to have many in any given draft class, but we saw Quinyon Mitchell this year. We saw Cooper DeJean. There were guys to be had. I don't know if that's the case here, but there are players who I've never heard of declaring for this one, like Azareya Thomas from Florida State. Never watched his tape, but the Maxwell Hairstons of the world, there are players you can get that I think can be impacts as CB3s or CB4s. And then along the offensive line, it's a deep class there as well. So I think that the Rams can fill things out nicely. And I think that they can have enough, but it's going to be tough for them to get over the hump. As the last word, is Kyren Williams a good running back? He is, right?
See, I think he is a good running back. I think he's closer to average than he is closer to great. And I think the people calling him an elite running back deserve to be shot in the face.
He's elite in the same way that Jalen Hurts is elite. Like
Really
literally,
good at
like
fantasy.
scoring 1-yard touchdowns.
I mean, yeah, fantasy players love him, and that's a great thing. And we're fantasy players, but I don't think either of us had Kyren Williams on our team.
I had him in Dynasty.
Oh, well, that's great. You got a great player.
Elite!
But yeah, on the field, he is a good running back. He'll find the stuff in between the tackles, which is a very great part to have. He's just never had that runaway speed. He's never had that shiftiness to really make a massive impact at the second level or the power to knock linebackers down. So he's better than I thought he would have become, but he does have some limits. So I wouldn't say he's like in the upper echelon of running backs or anything.
When you play the way that Kyren Williams does and you are looking for the layups on the ground, you're trying to dig out those 5-yarders and keep your team ahead of the chains, you can't fumble 8 times in your last 21 games.
That's rough.
That's problematic.
That is an issue. You know what? But it's always like if you get sick of Kyren Williams, you also got Kyren Williams on your bench. You got
Blake Corum.
Yes, sir. You got Blake Corum, man. He's literally just Kyren Williams 2.0. I mean, he does not have the athleticism or the shiftiness or the speed to get to the second level and make guys miss. But, I mean, he can knife through the offensive guard in the center like nobody else, just like Kyren Williams. He's not going to cut off the ball either. Maybe they make that change.
The Rams don't rebuild, they reload.
Yeah, they just pick the same player. That's what they – I mean, that's Kobe
Quinn
Turner.
Ewers, Matthew Stafford.
Kobe Turner's Aaron Donald.
Carson Beck, Matthew Stafford.
Stetson Bennett.
No, not obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. And yes,
Same
the Aaron Donald comps for Kobe Turner were entirely fair and warranted, in my opinion.
Kobe Turner this postseason, where we talked a lot about Verse, Kobe Turner looks like a superstar, man.
Oh, man, he's been fantastic. He was – I think that a lot of people looking at the box score wouldn't be able to tell you that he was way better than Braden Fisk this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not a Braden Fisk hater. Like, Braden Fisk has his role,
am.
but Kobe Turner, man, he was good.
Braden Fisk is only as good as he is because he's the number 2 clearly in that in that defensive tackle room. But Kobe Turner is a legitimate superstar. He's probably, it's crazy to say he's top 10 interior in the league. I mean, I know
I don't think so.
It's flushed with talent at the moment, but he's a freakishly good run defender. I mean, he's one of the smartest coming out of college, one of the smartest interior defensive linemen I ever evaluated, which, that was my first year evaluating interior defensive linemen, but still, and he's a freak in the pass rush game, great athlete. He just, I don't know, he always just finds the quarterback. He doesn't always get the sack, but he finds him. He gets a hand on him. I think his QB hits would probably be up there.
Kobe Turner is a true defensive tackle, even though he's undersized. Whereas Braden Fisk, who I believe is a little bigger, you know how like on Pro Football Reference you'll see FL or SE or B for players that played in the past, the flankers and split ends of the world? I think we should do the similar thing with Braden Fisk, except he should be an LP, a looper.
Yeah.
Since that's where all of his production comes from.
He's just a loop placer. I mean, he's literally, Chris Shula is just using him as like a Beyblade. We're just gonna throw you into the mix and let you make a spin move and see what happens.
That comp is awesome.
Yeah,
Let it rip, Braden Fisk.
Yeah, rip move or a spin move. Oh, the Rams' defensive line is fun to watch, man.
Can't wait to see it next year. Should be even better.
Absolutely. Yeah, why don't they just take another guy on the interior? I mean, eventually all of them in the aggregate will become as good as Aaron Donald.
You know what they need is like a really fun blitzing linebacker. Like a guy who's just an athlete, like a Devin White comp type of player that they can just throw around for fun.
Well, you know what? I mean, if Jalen Walker kills someone in the next 3 months, maybe he'll fall that far.
Could be.
Though he probably still wouldn't fall that far. But, I mean, there's a better than average chance. I mean, he's a Georgia player.
It's true. Bad things tend to happen there.
Yeah, so you never know. But that could be a fun thing. Also, just get a run-eating nose tackle. That'd be nasty. It'd be fun.
Add him right in there. You know who they should get is like Owen Papo.
Oh, yeah. Just a guy like...
a guy to run.
Yeah. You ask him to backpedal. No, I can't do that, coach. Run straight forward.
Done.
I'm your guy. That's your guy. Owen Papo, he will run straight forward, and he will not ever take a step backwards.
This is the Balls Talk Sports off-season free agency simulation.
Absolutely.
Early look. Are we ready to get out of here?
I think we are.
Well, folks, those were I'll have to audible this a little bit. Well, folks, those were the championship games. We did some autopsies on the teams that were eliminated this week for you. And stay tuned next week. We'll be bringing you coverage of the most important game of the year, the Pro Bowl, as well as some excellent bonus content. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, stay hard.